Huh. I really wanted to release this to the workshop, but it's got some modded parts on it, and since we can't release with modded parts, I've been trying to rebuild it in a way that fixes all the issues I had and also made it available to put on the workshop purely in vanilla parts. So you can see here I've got quite a lot of variation on it. I've gone through a lot of different versions. So I'll quickly run through what all the changes were and what some of the problems that I've been trying to fix are. This first one here, this is the very first one I made. And this is where most of the problems occurred, but this is the one that I tested and it like technically works. Issue number one, these crab pot locations and the actual hoppers are much too close to each other for everything to work when it's fully loaded. When there is 8 pots on here, it's very difficult to line them up into every one of these connection spots. And if you've got any pots up at the top end near the bridge, it's very hard to position a new crab pot over the hoppers and get all the crabs in the hoppers. So I think that was just an issue of these hoppers not actually being wide enough. They're only 5 blocks wide. On the fishing boat, it's 9 blocks wide, and that's really, really easy to use. So I wanted to change it out for at least 9 blocks in one direction. Another issue was, I guess, the control handle in the back. Not so much of an issue, but I wanted this to be usable in first person. And this is like, you've got no idea, maybe a little bit of an idea based on where the shadow is, but technically, realistically, you have no idea what it's doing unless you go into third person mode. There's also nowhere to sleep on this. So if we're using it in career and it's nighttime, you just want to get rid of the night, you can't use this as a place to sleep. And that's kind of annoying. There's no below deck either, so if you want to repair the engine, it's like you just can't. The engine is a problem because of that sort of staying within a 20k budget. This engine is actually really expensive for the amount of power it produces and the amount of space it takes up. Each one of these cylinders is quite expensive versus just having a single cylinder 3x engine, which would produce about the same amount of power as all of this, because you only need 1 crankshaft and 1 cylinder, versus I think this is 26 cylinders and 6 crankshafts or 7 crankshafts. So in version 2, which is this one, I don't think anything's actually different between these ones. This is the second one I started building, so I've kept the same sort of shape. I've tried to keep the same shape, but I put the pot holders down the back and expanded the hoppers out to a 9x9 grid like the fishing boat, because that worked really well. I was trying to raise this section up and then find a way that you could get down into the front area of the bow in this low section and put a living space down here to have a bed, but it sort of got a bit out of hand, didn't really work out how I wanted it. So I started working on this one, and I think what I had intended was, because the starting area is so small, if I just made the cab a bit further forwards, I could bring the pots a bit back. Then I could have this thing extend down and have more space for pots up here. This one also has sort of a driving position and a seat and a stairway down, which would come into the front of the bow. But as you can see, there's not really much room because of where the cab is. It's quite low, really. I also was using modded parts, so it sort of didn't help. Into the next one, still using modded windows and trying to figure out this stair situation. How can I actually get stairs down into the hull of the ship? So then we've got another one where I've tried to extend the bridge the whole way across the front, and that sort of works. You can sort of segment it off and have a space up the front, have an ability to come back and go around the hoppers, go around the engine, so everything's repairable, really easy to access. This one is still using modded windows, so not super helpful. And I also just didn't like the fact that the bridge went the whole way across. So going back to sort of what worked, which was the 9x9 hopper and 6 crab pot holders. And then we've switched over to vanilla windows and just tried to segment it so that there's only one stairway. But somewhere along the line, the size of this, trying to meet the size for the crab pots and the hopper and then the bridge, meant that the actual dimensions of the boat got really small. and that's bad for buoyancy because this is a very heavy boat. So on the next one, kind of the same situation, but in this one I was messing around with trying to put a pulley in the side, and then in this space up the front I was going to have winches and anchors were going to come out. So that's kind of getting on the right track. The next one I just started trying to put these ridge things on so that I could break up the height of the bow because it's quite narrow on the inside. Oh yeah, this one's actually very recent. This one's quite cool because I've got all my instruments put in. I've got an XML instrument panel on a corner, and I gave the driver a position just to one side that let me put a staircase that's very easy to access the bow and has access to come back in for the engine and the hoppers. The only real issue with this one is that this is just a tiny space up the front, and I'd also need to lift the floor up, which I think I was going to put microcontrollers in the floor to create a fuel tank and lift the floor up just enough so that you would step down into the engine area and then still have 8 blocks for this living area. And then coming into the next one, I've pulled the bridge really far back to try and expand that space in the bow, and now I've got a kitchen. So yeah, this kitchen is cupboards along the top, drawers and cupboards below a sink. The sink is a scoop, an air scoop, and then I've got stretched manual valves coming through a stretched wedge, and a couple of pipes make it look like a spout is coming out, and a little microwave oven on the bench there. Then this would be a door that takes you back into the engine room, which I think the engine was going to go behind the kitchen, and then the hoppers would just go along the back. The thing I didn't like about this was that there's just way too much bow, and so that means that having hoppers and crab pots on the back, there's probably not enough space. I think that might actually be the end of the build zone. So then we've gone back to putting the bridge way up the front, and I tried to put this door on here where this would give you access to the engine. So then I've still got space for the crab pots on the back. I've still got the 9x9 hoppers, and we've still got the same bridge from before where the driver's on one side and the stairs go down, but then the space in the front gets incredibly short again. So you can see I'm sort of on the right track. Here I've got the same setup, but I've indented the wall to the bridge a little bit so that I've cut out space for a crane to be positioned. And then what I've done, I've put the crab pots on one side and the hoppers on the other side, and I've gone for 2x3 instead of 3x3. This let me put this little walkway through the middle so you can still access everything for repair. But again, the front of the bow is just really small and it wasn't easy to put the kitchen in there, so we had to start again. And this is where I thought, well, why don't I just put the bridge at the back and the crane and the crabs and the hoppers all up the front, because at least you can put the crane sort of in the center right at the front near the smallest area, and that does work. It's just not the style that I was going for with this boat though. So now there is actually tons of room, and the kitchen got bigger in here with more cupboards down below. So I think this configuration would be best, but I don't want to build this style of boat right now. You can see it is actually quite a lot of space. If you really took the time to place it out better for the crab pots, you could probably load a lot more pots on here. And this is just sort of a test for how many pots can I put on here. And I also spun the crane around, so now it goes across the bow. And I think that's actually a really interesting way to position the crane. Probably is the most efficient for getting more and more pots. If the bridge on this one was all the way to the very back, then you could bring the ladder and everything further back and you could have even more pots. And this crane does actually have quite a lot of reach, so there wouldn't be too much issue, I think, grabbing maybe another 2 or 4. And then you could expand the hopper as well to just make it easier to get more in there, or you could put more pots coming across the whole way. An issue with this one is your visibility is kind of shot. You just really can't see anything with all the pots on there. Probably doesn't matter so much if you're doing crabs out in the open ocean, like out in deep ocean, because you're not really going to hit anything. And then this is where I'm at now. So this is version 13. Similar kind of setup. I've got the hoppers on the side, I've got crab pots down the back, and it kind of wraps around. And then the crane is currently here, and I think this is probably where it's going to be. But I want to move this control handle. Originally it was behind this crane, and that made it really, really hard to see what was going on. So I moved it to the side, thinking that'd make it heaps easier to see. But then the slider was moving on its own, so I had to put this other slider on so that I could use the brake on it to stop it from falling back down. And so now you can't really see anything again. It's probably better to have the handle over here somewhere so that you you see the crane further away from where you are. But that crane actually works really well. It's got a lot of reach. It can reach all the way off the back and over both sides. It's pretty simple to control. Yeah, and I had to use a medium winch because there's no on-off signal going through the small winches, which sucks a lot because it looks really nice having a small winch. The medium winch is just kind of ugly. On this one I've got a ladder that can go up because there will be a lot of instruments up here and probably a mast. So that's good for repairing those instruments. Door on the side. And then I've opted for a ladder down a hatch instead of the stairs. I've kept the same kind of angled instruments, but I got rid of the XML instrument panel and I've just tried to condense it down to what you really will need. So on this display, probably have a map and GPS coordinates. I can put stuff up here, which I think the compass ball is probably better up on the top, and maybe having another display that has the weather readout and a bigger map or something like that, so that you just use the small one for GPS. This would be throttle. I broke the propeller. And then probably an engine start, engine temperature, engine RPS, fuel and battery. That's kind of all you really need. So that's enough dials and instruments to give you that information. So if you hop down the hatch, the kitchen is here again, but I've got a dishwasher that's supposed to look like a swirly water thing. So dishwasher on the side, one more extra cabinet, and then a little table kitchenette thing. I figure a crab boat of this size probably has only 2 crew, like someone operating the crane and putting all the crabs on and someone captaining the boat. So I've put just 2 seats in here. They probably don't eat at the same time, to be honest, but yeah, 2 seats. And then I wanted to put beds or something in this space, and I think there is enough space to squeeze it in there. And then back here, I'm going to use this space for servers, aka microcontrollers, because behind here is actually kind of a jumbled mess of XML stretching out from the kitchen. And then I've got a modular engine. This is a 1-cylinder 3X. And then the hoppers. This is my roll stabilizer. And then these are all the things for the crab pots. This random barrel is adding weight to the crane, so I kind of need to keep that in here. And I don't know if this would be a walkable space, which kind of sucks because like it's not really tall enough. I think it's only 6 blocks high, and with the roll stabilizer moving around in here, realistically it'd be better to have another floor on top of this, so then it would only make it like 4 blocks tall. They're kind of not really useful for anything. But functionality wise, it works really well if you were playing in Korea. So yeah, this is the one that I'm working on right now. Actually, having the keys right next to the crane is quite helpful. I think what I'll do is have a crane control. Maybe I'll leave this one on the crane so you can use either. But I'll put one over here somewhere so that you can see the crane and all the pots. And I'll put some kind of instrument panel that has all that kind of key nonsense somewhere over here. Obviously I have to get rid of the smoke. Oh, that's not the one I want. This one might fall off on its own. I think I can just unlock all of them. And if they fall off on their own, that's good. At the same time, it's kind of bad. Oh, all clear. All pots are overboard. This whole process of building 13 hulls of this size has just sort of shown me that a crab boat of this style doesn't really work for the size. It's just too unstable. Really need to work on the logic for these pots because I can't find them. Oh, is the water just too deep here? No. No. It is. That's what it is. No, that's so dumb. Like, what do you even do about that? Having a too short a winch. If I put the larger winch on, we go from 2x3 by 1 up to 3x3 I think. It's a massive jump in physical blocks being taken up. And then the trade-off is we go from a 40-meter depth limit up to a 300-meter depth limit. So instead of this, that's a microcontroller and that's a microcontroller. I can't release this either because of all the modded parts on it. I think that's mostly decorative stuff, and then this just goes like that. Huh, you do actually get quite a bit more space. Man, that looks goofy though. Man, I don't like that, but it does seem to work. Man. Okay. No. Come on. At least because it's dropped the buoys now, it lost a bunch of weight. Uh-oh. Oh, that's not good. If I turn off infinite electric, you can see this little solar panel working. Because the radio is just always on, it's going to die. And I guess now, because this winch uses a lot more electricity. Oh wait, that winch is not connected to electricity. Because the battery is down here. There we go. 0.988. It drains quite slowly and the solar panel does give it a bit more charge. It's because the radio is always sending this position. And I figure that's an okay thing. It gives you a time limit of how long you can leave this pot floating around, and it does drain pretty slowly. Like that's the 5th decimal place that it's draining at, maybe the 4th per second. So yeah, there's quite a bit of charge in it. And now that it's bigger with the extra space because of the winch, probably could have its own battery put in it. But anyway, back to this boat. I'm really not confident that this is even a good option as a starting vessel. Just because of the weight of the pot. Crabbing is really interesting and seems like it brings in a lot of money for a career save file, but this fishing boat is way easier to use, is in the 30k range. So if you can get a mission or go and find some crate, get you over 10k to begin with, then you can have a fishing boat that is just heaps easier to use. You don't make as much money, but you can actually use it. I don't know why this is so much more compact. It just works so much better. So this is 40,000. Okay, we probably can't just find a bunch of crates, but I think that's because it's got these displays up in the top. Yeah, they're like probably totaling close to $3,000, maybe more. Having this map up here as well with all your information on it, that's just very nice. I think I'll keep working on this crab boat idea because, you know, it doesn't really seem like it's gonna work how I thought it would. And in the meantime, I can probably just remove some of the mods. Like there's only a couple of modded windows on this fishing boat, and I can put my kitchen in the living area of this most likely, and just clean this up, give it some extra paint and decoration. And then this would be ready to go to the workshop. And even though it is quite a bit more expensive, it's actually functional and everything in there works. I think maybe as well the dash on that could be replaced with the one that I've got in the crab boat, where it rotates up a little bit, because that gives you a really nice angle looking at the instruments that are directly in front of the helm. It looks like this might actually be self-writing as well, and I don't know why. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.